Welcome to the Connect, Practice, Track, and Grow podcast. Habits, routines, motivations, and mindsets from some of the most successful real estate professionals among us. Check out the show notes at connectpracticetrackgrow.com. This show is brought to you by the strategic resource for real estate professionals, creating and coaching business opportunities and strategies that support and add value to the lives of real estate professionals at thestrategicresource.com, and by Roost Real Estate Company. Today's real estate agent doesn't follow old rules. She makes new ones. Learn more at careerwithroost.com.
Hi, all. Chris McAllister here with the Connect, Practice, Track, and Grow podcast, where it's my job to make your business better and your life easier. I'm back today with my podcast collaborator and our digital marketing director, Lacey LeBlanc, and our special guest, Tayler Kohl. Tayler is our newest realtor, and she's based in Columbus, Ohio, and she's got a big director title too, just like Lacey, and she's our director of business development. So thank you both for being here and welcome.
It's my pleasure.
So one of the things that we brought Tayler on for is, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably also getting information from the new real estate professional and Roost Real Estate Company weekly, even in the form of an email and possibly some postcards every month or so with some hopefully valuable information. Or maybe you've downloaded, a couple of the books that we have advertised out there on social media. And we've been doing that for real estate agents for probably, going on 2 years now. And we've had, I think, I'd have to look closely, but it's close to 700 people have downloaded the book and have opted in to our database. And the one thing that we had never done is try to make contact or engage with these folks who are actually looking at the content, reading the content, and every once in a while I'll hear from them. So what we wanted to do today, and Taylor's just been in position for about, I think this is her 4th week, but she's already started making calls to the database and specifically to people who have recently opened one of the educational emails. And we wanted to talk to her about that process and the questions that she's asking and what she's hearing from the people that she's been able to connect with.
Yeah, I'm excited. The number is around 700, Chris. So that's 700 pieces of free education that you've sent out. And obviously this is all marketing Roost in a specific way, but it's done with a pure heart is what I would like to point out. This information is from you and your brain and your experience and the people, the agents at Roost, their experience. So it's offering up this information to any agent who feels like they would benefit from it. And I'm excited to hear what those conversations with those agents look like from Tayler.
But then, here I am interrupting already, but you said something that's very important. We are putting this out there from a pure heart. Everything that goes out is what I've learned from, being a broker in Ohio, Florida for the last 20 years. And, it took me 20 years to get it right. And I'm a bit of a slow learner. So here we are, but it's not entirely, of course, altruistic either. We hope that the way we do business or the way that Roost approaches the business resonates, with the people who enjoy the information. So without putting too fine a point on it, our goal is that by staying in front and staying top of mind with these folks, that when it does come time for them to consider a new brokerage or make a change in their business, that, they'll consider us. So that's what's in it for us. But yes, it is definitely from a pure place. And I appreciate you saying that.
Well, Tayler, it worked for Tayler, right? She saw something in Roost and joined us. So Tayler, what did you see and how did you just, I know that's not the bulk of what we're going to talk about today, but I think it's important. What did you see, Tayler, in Roost that compelled you to look into it and then ultimately kind of join the team?
Yeah. So after Chris and I's, first initial meeting, I went into it with an open mind, not really 100% sure what to expect. But what I really liked about Chris and his vision for a brokerage for real estate agents was a place where agents could really feel supported. And I think that's one of the most important qualities that you could find in a brokerage, especially with my personal experience. I've been a part of a few. And what Roost gives its agents is that support.
Yeah. So it's interesting, so Taylor, when did you get your license at first?
I was licensed in 2018.
Okay. So 2018, so that's 5 years. And, obviously we had pandemic time in there, but what's interesting, and I don't want to put words in Taylor's mouth but one cohort, the one group of agents that we've always been successful with are, for lack of a better word, they're the group of agents that we call the disillusioned. And these are folks who have had their license 2, 3, 4, 5 years, but have never quite gotten traction. And, they're in a place where, they're a little disappointed that real estate isn't what they were promised. And maybe it's time to have a serious think about whether they made a good decision or not, if it's time to cut their losses. But the beauty of the reason I love the people who are somewhat disillusioned is that Tayler is a perfect case in point. They're not ready to give up. So they have this faith that they made a good decision. In their heart, they know it was the right move, but they also know it has to be, a better way. And, my primary goal for Roost is to make sure that Tayler and every other agent like her has everything they need to build their own personal book of business. We want to be behind them. We want to be supportive. We want to be partners with them. We want to invest in them. But this is their business. And we want to make sure that they're successful, because we don't succeed unless our agents succeed. And, quite frankly, agents that come to us brand new are great. We have good success with new agents. But then what often happens is, after 2 or 3 years of super success, they start to stand out in the market, and suddenly they're being recruited by every brokerage in town. And sometimes, we lose a couple of those people because the grass is always greener on the other side. So it is a target market for us. It's an agent group that we really want to focus on, is the people who have had their license for, I'm just going to say broadly, 1 to 5 years.
Yeah, that's interesting. That has to be kind of some of the conversations you were having, Tayler, with these other agents. So the conversations are valuable, obviously, to Roost, but I feel like they're really valuable to the rest of the market, right? Because we're in an interesting time in real estate, not something that maybe no one has ever been through before. And with COVID being right in our rear view, certainly it's not the first interesting time that we've seen in real estate recently. But every one of these tumultuous times is a little bit different. So hearing from actual agents in the market outside of Roost, right? You do a great job communicating within Roost, but hearing from these actual agents who are outside of Roost on what's going right, what's going wrong, what they're frustrated with, what they're happy with, what their goals are, where they're struggling and where they're succeeding, has to be super valuable information. So Tayler, what were you hearing? What kind of questions were you asking, and what kind of responses were you getting?
On the agent side, it was really easy to connect with agents talking about how tough the market is. I mean, we've seen such a shift that everyone's talking about. It's this shift in the market, and you really have to adapt and kind of move in different ways that you really weren't having to move when the market was 100%, seller's market, when you could list anything and it would sell, the next day, So really just kind of bonding in that way with agents, and kind of really, being able to say, wow, like it is tough, and to talk to somebody who really understands how that is.
The beauty of it is Taylor's starting to talk to people, and we start to get into some deeper relationships with these folks, making that name in the database a real person, and vice versa. I think we are going to learn a lot, and we're going to learn more about how Roost can help these folks. So Taylor, what was your favorite conversation, or what was the conversation that went best? Who was that with? And I know you ended up talking to a couple of people. One was a mortgage broker, I think, and one was a business coach. But why don't you pick a couple of your favorite conversations, or pick a favorite one, and tell us how that conversation went?
Yeah, so I had a few really good conversations. Actually, on the very first try, my very first connection with an agent out of Fort Myers. He was a restaurant owner, business owner for 30 years. And it was really cool to chat with him about how he was able to, just from being a small business owner, meet so many people throughout, having the restaurant. I mean, you think about it, how many people are you meeting on a day-to-day, basis? And he was really able to grow his real estate business in that way, which I thought was really cool. We talked about that for a while. Let's see here. Talked to a lot of people a few agents who were currently studying for their broker licenses. It was cool to talk to people about, their goals. They saw success as an individual agent, and it was really cool to talk about how they were kind of moving on to something a little bit better, or not better, but a little bit bigger. I talked to a lot of people who were in the industry, but not actual agents. I talked to insurance agents, life coaches, and these people were reading, Chris's pieces of information to send to agents who they work with. So that was very interesting to find out as well.
Pat on the back for Chris.
So that was cool. So the first week, I think Tayler made, I don't remember what it was. I'd have to go back and look, but it was 40 some calls the first week. And, these calls aren't exactly cold calls, but they're darn chilly. So what we're doing is we're calling people who have downloaded the books or opened the emails last week, and they can interrupt me anytime, but it's basically, hey, this is Tayler. I work with Chris, and we're the ones sending you the information, from the new real estate professional. Are you an agent now? So, not exactly cold. We know they're interested in real estate. We know they're interested in being an agent. But these are initial introduction calls, just trying to make a connection. And I do think it's cool because I think you had a mortgage broker and a coach in Dayton. Mm-hmm. And it is gratifying that, we have these people out there that are sharing this information that we don't even know about. So that was kind of gratifying. And, the whole concept of connect, practice, track, and grow, promote, enhance, support, and coach. I mean, that does I think it does relate to more businesses than just real estate. So it's cool to hear that you had some insurance agents and stuff. When people told you that they were did you hear anything specific about what kind of success they're having out there right now, or how their career what the tipping point was that they felt successful?
So I'd say collectively, a lot of my conversations with agents really came back to working by referral. A lot of these people who I spoke with, they had a book of business by doing other things unrelated to real estate. That was so useful in the success that they're seeing in real estate. I talked to a school teacher who has, a list of people, parents, coaches, other teachers that they work with in the school. So I'd say collectively, networking and working by referral is such an important piece to real estate that not a lot of people really think about when they think of real estate agents.
That's interesting, and also somewhat selfishly validating. Everything that I've done over the years, whether it's the books, how to make it, eight success habits of the new real estate professional, how to make it in the new real estate business. Everything that we've done at Roost, everything I've done my entire career is from the perspective of working by referral, and we talk a lot in eight success habits. That's who we cater to. That's who we want to attract. That's how we do business. That's who we want to support. And quite frankly, every piece of marketing we've done is designed not to appeal to people who don't see the world that way. So actually, that's kind of a giant win I didn't consider, is that these people you're talking to understand the value of building their own book of business and soliciting referrals. That's very cool, whether it came from the restaurant business or teachers and so forth. So as a new agent with us, you've got your first week in taking Brian Buffini's 100 Days to Greatness class. How does that first week or 2 weeks of training about the value of the database and making connections, can you relate any of that to what you heard from this first batch of calls with
Yeah, absolutely. I think the foundation of Buffini, the 100 Days to Greatness, is all about your database, constantly adding people to your database. It's so important, and it's very difficult to sit and try to think of everyone that everyone that you meet. But it's so helpful to have one place to go, to have everybody there. So important to constantly be in contact with those people, because you think about everyone in life, and just making those like catch-up calls, calling your client that you worked with 3 or 4 years ago, just calling them up and saying, hi, I was thinking of you. How are things going? And just letting the conversation kind of flow naturally. And then if you get a referral out of the conversation, great. But it's almost better to, make those people think, wow, she, really just did want to check in with me. She really does care. So doing the 100 Days to Greatness for the first week really hones in on how important that database is, and how important, again, it is to be constantly reaching out and connecting with people.
Yeah, I was going to say, y'all are really putting the connect, practice, track, and grow here. But from a marketing perspective, I think that, I love marketing real estate, but that's not all I market. I think the most successful people in any business are the people who work by referral, whether you're a hairstylist or, a restaurant manager, or, I think that's really a true statement that applies across industry, across verticals, even in life. Right? Like if you get a new medical diagnosis and you happen to have met somebody at your kid's soccer game that's a doctor with that specialty, then how impactful is that to your life to be able to call somebody up and say, or if you want a cake for your daughter's wedding shower and you met somebody, that you're a real estate agent and you have a client who is makes wedding cakes, then how impactful is that to your life? So I think it's just, at the risk of sounding kind of touchy-feely, it's a way of life that improves life and business as a result. And I think that's what really, when I look at clients I want to work with in marketing, I want to work with the people who value those connections and who value that personal aspect of their business as much as they do the bottom line, because that's a true statement across all industries. And you guys are really proving my point here, which I love.
Tayler, if you had taken 100 Days to Greatness, in 2018, when you first got your license, do you think you would have had as good an understanding of it as you do today?
Yeah. It's kind of crazy to think, if I would have gone in with this mindset back in 2018, how much of a difference that would have made for me. I did have a database, but I wasn't regularly, following up or writing, handwritten notes to people. I wasn't calling clients just to check in. And I keep thinking, wow, if I had done that, how big could I have grown my business? But I'm not thinking of it as, coulda, shoulda, woulda. I'm excited to start implementing that now in my personal business.
Well, and the cool thing is, when, we send out Roost Ramblings on behalf of, you and all the agents every month from the agents. And that's great. It does keep one oar in the water, so to speak. And, it helps keep you top of mind for that few minutes when they're walking from the garage, to the trash can, or from the mailbox to the trash can. But the only way that really works, the way you get the full benefit of it, is when you're following up with those personal connections. And that's the thing that's key. How I think we both kind of got clear this week as we work through what our process is going to be to connect with, agents. It's almost like everything that you're learning in Buffini, everything that I've learned from Buffini and fallen out of practice with, we want to use those exact same strategies and tactics on, building up a database of agents that see the world the way that we do. And, just like, we tell all of our agents that, just like if you get 150 people in your database, right? 150 people that you would recognize at the grocery store and be able to have a quick conversation with. Any agent, I don't care where you are, that gets 150 people in their database and, actively works by referral, they've got a $100,000, $150,000, $200,000 a year business there, depending on where they are. And I think our goal has to be the same. That my guess is we'll start to get traction once we let 150 people, that you have a relationship with, or both of us have a relationship with, that know about Roost. Because I'll tell you, one of the cool things about, recruiting new agents and going through that courtship process with new agents is, you will have, I think what you're going to find, and we need to have these conversations, probably every few months with Lacey, but I think what you may find is you may make some friends with agents that will never come to work at Roost. But I guarantee you will find agents that never come to work at Roost, but will tell anybody they meet that they should go talk to Tayler and see what Roost is all about. It's an interesting thing that agents who may be successful, don't want to rock their business, will never leave, aren't necessarily the same agents that, have so much faith in their brokerage or their broker or the broker's business plan that, they think everybody will be successful. So, it's just like working by referral. The idea is we build relationships. Hopefully we earn referrals from these professionals out there. We have contacts, we have, co-op partners and all that. But I think that the minute we take the approach that we're trying to, and you don't do this, I know that, but we're not trying to sell everybody that picks up the phone. But I really would like to be able to help or provide value to everybody that picks up the phone. And if that turns into referral or a relationship down the road, then I'm the happiest guy on earth.
What a mindset of abundance that you'll have in this, that, everybody's not for Roost and vice versa. Roost isn't for everybody, but providing the cheese without whiskers, as Dean Jackson would say, all cheese, no whiskers, just this really valuable information and this really valuable relationship, and how that inevitably will lead to more success for everyone involved. There's enough to go around. So I think that's a really good point to make about the people you keep, the company you keep is who has a mindset of abundance.
Well, it's interesting too, as we talk about connect, practice, track, and grow, in terms of what Tayler's doing right now, aside from her personal business, she's making connections, right? We're trying to put some good stuff out into the world that people are going to be interested in. So it makes it an easier call to introduce ourselves. So that's the first connection. And then, the practices, like kind of what we worked through yesterday, was what is our, for lack of a better word, what does our recruiting practice look like? And what are the steps? And where can we add value along the way? And where can we show appreciation? And, what was interesting is, the first week of Buffini is all about personal notes and, following up. And, one of the things that seems like a no-brainer, and I'm sure Tayler would have gotten to it before me, but, every time she gets off the phone with a new agent like this, she's going to send them a personal note that says, thank you so much for taking the time, right? It's another chance to connect. It's another chance to show that we practice what we preach, that they matter as a person and as a professional. And then the third thing that's just critical in this is tracking everything we find. And, when you're working by referral, just like Brian Buffini teaches, you want to track the behaviors that generate productive referral-based relationships. So, you want to have an idea in your mind that, I'm going to make my personal connection standard is going to be, I'm going to make 5 calls every week to my database. I'm going to write 5 personal notes, and I'm going to add at least 3 people to my database, no matter what, every week. And no matter what else happens the week, if I do those things, I win the week, right? It's not about, did you get paid? It's not about if you had a closing, because if you win the week, the money's going to come. I guarantee it. And it's the same sort of process that, we're going to take here. But the key is that, just like for buyers and sellers, you track those behaviors, you track those conversations. And I know Tayler's really been getting into a groove about documenting everything that you hear in Go Agent, the CRM we're using for this project, and just making sure that we know where each of these people are coming from, whether in their business or, are they a happy face? Are they willing to engage? Are they somebody, tracking is key, because once we know who we have in the database and so forth, and we push towards that magic 150 number, tracking is everything. And it's everything when you're working by referral for sales, or it's everything when you're working by referral, for property management, or for trying to build out the agent group with us. And I started preaching again, so forgive me.
Well, practically speaking, for some of the agents who are listening, and again, we're trying to drive the point home about how these, touchy-feely connections translate into bottom line revenue, right? So you're making people feel heard and seen, and that's all very validating for them, and you're building these relationships. But it's a conversation about whenever they are ready, right? Whether that's ready to make a referral, whether that's ready to come join Roost, whether that's ready to sell their home with that agent, or whatever the case may be. It's been a maximum of 7 days since they've heard from you, Chris. And that's a maximum. So they might have gotten a personal note. Also, they might have gotten a pop-by for a holiday. They might have
got a birthday card.
They might have gotten a birthday card. They might have gotten a phone call from Tayler. So, with somebody's there giving information freely, truly, purely, and you're ready to make a move, then, practically talking about the bottom line, you're there for them. And it makes a lot of sense for them to reach out to you when that time does come. So it's, when we're talking about how does this actually, you say the money will come, that part will come. How does that actually work is a question I think a lot of folks might have. And that's how. Is because by being consistent with this, by doing the connection and then the practice part, you're there whenever they're ready to make whatever decision it is to work with you.
Yeah. And Tayler, you tell me, but I don't think you feel like you're selling anything at this point, correct?
No, I would definitely describe these initial calls as more of a discovery call. Really just reaching out to check in, to chat, to figure out, how long have you been in real estate? How are you liking it? How about this crazy market we're in? Do you have a relationship, with your broker? What's that like? What do you love about your current brokerage? Things like that. So not being salesy at all. I think that's why I've gotten a lot of these agents to open up a bit and have these natural types of conversations.
Yeah, I think so too. And, what we're going to be doing is we've got a nice little package together that, Lacey, I sent you the package. Did you see the brochures?
I did. I got back into town yesterday and I felt so loved. I'm writing with my new Roost Real Estate Co. pen as we speak. I don't know if anybody out there has ever been courted for a partnership or a position or a role. I have had the luxury of that happening to me at least once now. But that's truly what it feels like. It was a very personalized package. It was all focused on, me and what's in this for me and not what I can do for you. I would venture a guess, Tayler, and say you probably listen on these calls more than you talk because you're asking questions. This is a discovery call for you, right? Sometimes a discovery call can even have, I know that's used a lot in the financial industry, and maybe that has a negative connotation, but you're the one doing the discovering and you're not asking them to discover you, you're asking them about themselves. And this package is very similar in that way. It's all about what's in it for me, the realtor, not for Roost, the company. And I feel it's like a date. It's like you're asking me out on a date with a package in the mail.
So we should make a note about remote pop-bys, right? So anytime you really get somebody who is engaged in the 5-star prospect, then we want to send them a piece of swag, just like we would if we were doing a local pop-by. But so anyway, if you made 40 some calls, you had 14 people who were receptive to the call and receptive to the idea of being a realtor and so forth. So the next step is we sent them all a package and I sent samples to Lacey. We're in Columbus, Lacey's in Hickory, North Carolina. But so she doesn't see this stuff every day. But it includes a brochure, about the local market, a couple of the nice soft copies of the books and a piece of swag and things like that. So, after Tayler does make a connection, we're sending something nice and substantive. And again, we're not expecting anybody to just suddenly change their license over to Roost, but we're hoping that, especially since we're unknown in so many of these markets we want to break into, that it'll give them a feel for what we're all about. And again, whenever they're ready, they can reach out. So there's a whole nother set of, follow-up calls that Tayler will be making to the people who get, the package as we narrow the funnel from everybody who's downloaded books to, maybe picking up the phone to getting a package to, eventually getting a one-on-one coaching session with Chris. All along the way, our goal is to give and learn everything that we can about that agent and how we could ultimately help them if they chose to hire us basically as their broker. Anything else that stuck in your mind about that first batch of calls, Tayler, that you'd like to share?
No. So I really just think overall it was very successful. I mean, the first group of agents, 51 agents I called, 14 of them were smiley faces. So I mean, it's a good chunk of people. Same for the owner's side, 71 owners. And then I got to chat with 15. So
that's phenomenal.
Overall, very successful.
And you don't see those kind of results from social media. You don't see those kind of results from, direct mail. You don't see those kind of results from other means of marketing. Not to say that those aren't valuable tools as part of your, marketing arsenal, but I think those are huge numbers. 14 out of 51 is a huge percentage of, and it makes it so much more valuable, I think, especially as a first touch. So great pat on the back for both of you. And I'm super excited to see more, hear more.
So grateful to have Tayler on the team. I can think this stuff through. I love the marketing part. I love the planning and so forth, but, and I love talking about real estate, but Tayler is a far better person to pick up the phone and have a heart-to-heart conversation with these folks than I ever would be. So hopefully between the two of us, we'll be able to do some good in the real estate world.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you both. I appreciate it. This has been fun, and we'll do it again soon.
Thanks,
Sounds
Chris.
good. Thank you.
And there we have it. Thanks for listening in. If you want to continue the conversation, go to www.connectpracticetrackgrow.com. That's connectpracticetrackgrow.com, where we have additional information about the podcast, archived episodes, and an option you can select to be a guest on the show. We'd love to hear from you. So that's it. We'll be back next time with another episode of the Connect, Practice, Track, and Grow podcast.